There's a current sentiment spreading by the British government that the UK population just simply don't understand digital ID, which is why we're all opposed to it, because we're all silly dumb stupids that don't know nothing about no internet, no privacy, or nothing. We need to explain it better, Labour MPs get antsy about Starmer's digital ID blitz. A push to give all British digital identification is front and centre of the Prime Minister's migration focus relaunched, but his troops fear mixed messaging is missing the point. But while many MPs in the Prime Minister's governing Labour Party back the idea in theory, there are plenty despairing at the botched communication strategy, which they believe has set the wide-ranging policy up for a fall. Under Starmer's plans, digital ID will be required for the right to work checks by 2029. Incorrect, by the way, 2027. Ministers insist the ID, a second attempt to land ID cards for Brits after a botched first go under Tony Blair, won't track people's location, spending habits or online activity, whilst having access to their location, spending habits and online activity. Yet Labour MPs feel a more sellable emphasis on improving people's experience of public services has gotten lost. No, we're aware. We're aware. It might make things faster. It might make applying for a job a bit quicker. It might make applying for a house a little bit quicker. It's still not safe. Instead, Starmer's government, with populist right-winger Nigel Farage breathing down its neck, has attempted to link the plan to a migration crackdown. Here's the bit that gets me. Here's the bit that just cracks me up. It's a no-brainer, said Labour MP Alison Gardner, chair of the all-party parliamentary group for digital identity. Oh, so she's not biased. It absolutely will make people's lives easier, more secure, and give them more control over their data. We need to explain it better to people so they understand that this is for them and not being done to them. Now, before we rip that to shreds, a quick word from today's video sponsor. Now, I see so many comments from you guys with different perspectives and viewpoints on different stories such as this. And a big problem that I've seen recently is the amount of people that are swayed by biased media. Now, we all have biases, including journalists. And sometimes when we're trying to get the most precise and accurate picture of what's happening in the world, it is so difficult to fight through that news tab on Google. But with today's video sponsor, Ground News, finding out what's happening in the world has become significantly easier. You're able to see the bias of different media, whether it's far left, far right, or very centrist. You're also able to see a factuality report that tells you whether what you're reading is even truthful to begin with. And on top of that, they also have a blind spot, which is basically for unreported media by both the left and the right, so you can really get clued in on some of that media that's actually been buried. If you want to get yourself 40% off a Vantage plan, make sure you use my link down below, which is ground.news/CW. Now, let's get back to the video. So of course, Alison Gardner seems to think that we just don't understand, and there is a really noble and great idea behind all of this, and we're all just stupid. It doesn't matter that this makes things easier. It just doesn't. It can make things easier for the British population, and it might make applying for a job a little bit easier. You know, the once every 5 years on average that people apply for a new job, it might make it a bit faster for them to go and find a new job. Yes, it might save them 15 minutes over a 2 to 5 year period. So we've got the benefit, and then we have the risks, and the risks significantly outweigh the benefits, and that's why everyone's so up in arms about this. This is dangerous. This is also putting power into the hands of the government that they don't need. The government is very powerful as it is. They're already arresting people for tweets. Like, let's rein in on the power. A consultation on the plans will be launched by the end of 2025 before legislation next year. The government's huge majority means that it's highly likely to become law, but there's a potentially bumpy road ahead. See, I personally don't think it's going to happen. I think, you know, already in the past month, 3 million people have signed the petition. As you get closer to this actually happening and coming into effect, and it hits mainstream media a bit harder, more and more people will be signing this petition, and I just don't see it happening. 2 decades after Blair's New Labour first proposed plastic identity cards, Starmer wants to finish the job, pitching a plan to make digital ID mandatory for right-to-work checks as a way to deter irregular migration. So here's the thing. They've said that they want to make it mandatory for right-to-work checks, but they've also tried to institute this through banks as well. So you'll need it to access your banking records. You'll also need it to access multitudes of other services like benefits, NHS, all of this stuff. And your standard identification, your passport and driving license won't be sufficient for that. So when you say it's not mandatory, but you need it to do anything, it's mandatory. And we actually covered that in the last video. Yet the sweeping change announced on the eve of Labour conference didn't get a mention in Starmer's set-piece speech, and notably didn't appear in the party's election manifesto. And by the way, there is a reason for this. The main reason they didn't mention it is because people will talk about it. And if people talk about it, there's nothing good that's come from people talking about it. No one wants it at all. No one. So every time Labour say something publicly about it, whether it be through like a press conference or a publication they put online, it gets ripped to shreds. And at the moment, it's better for them just to wait until they roll it out completely for the whole of the UK than it is to even talk about it. The announcement hasn't been handled well, admitted pro-digital ID Labour MP, granted anonymity to speak candidly. Our argument for it keeps changing, but none of it is full-throated enough. And that's the thing, there is no reason for introducing it. The reasons that they're giving us change all of the time. There's the thing about immigration, which by the way was a new thing that they introduced. That wasn't the original reason that they stated when they first spoke about it back in the summer. And the messaging has shifted since the initial push too. Technology Secretary Liz Kendall later stressed giving people power and control over their lives, saying the public is too often at the mercy of a system that does not work for us as well as it should. That was only after a drop in poll ratings for the idea. A petition against it, meanwhile, has racked up close to 3 million signatures. And people were talking about this in a negative way for months now, since the idea was originally discussed back in the summer, because the original idea was saying that it gives people the power to access services and they can do things easier. Obviously, everyone saw through that, and during their initial discussions that took place back in July of this year, there was no mention of immigration, migration, the boats, or anything like that. There was no discussion of any of that. Then all of a sudden last month when they announced it officially, it was all about protecting our borders, because they've realised that, you know, Farage, for all his flaws, of which there are many, trust me, Farage is becoming popular because of his stance on things like protecting our borders. Now Labour have decided, even though it goes against their party line, they need the votes. They need the public support. So they're just now completely sacrificing all of their beliefs as a party to try and win some public popularity, whilst implementing a very dystopian regime. The shape-shifting rhetoric painting digital ID first as a necessary inconvenience before calling it vital for state efficiency caused some heads to spin. It did. The government communication has not learned from the mistakes made from when digital ID was proposed 20 years ago, said a second Labour MP, who thought the focus on immigration meant ministers weren't talking about the benefits it brings to ordinary British citizens. Red flags have also been waved over the compulsory right to work checks, given only the very wealthiest Brits never need to work, making it de facto mandatory, which it is. Essentially, the top 1% of the people in the UK won't need this, and everyone else will. There's been a knee-jerk reaction, particularly to the word mandatory, which I think British people have naturally reacted against, admitted Gardner, who argues voters should have a choice about using the scheme. It's a little bit of a bandwagon people have latched onto to derail the entire concept, but it's not a bandwagon. So far, the government keeps saying it's not mandatory, whilst explaining a whole host of things that it will be needed for. Now, I'm no expert, but to do your food shop, you need a bank account. The cash system in the UK still exists, yes, but the truth is most people aren't getting paid in cash. Most people are getting paid from their work into their bank account. And to work, they need digital ID. To have a bank account, they'll need digital ID. If they break their leg at work, they'll need to go to the hospital to use the NHS, for which they'll need a digital ID. Effectively, what the government are saying is that you don't need digital ID, but if you want to have access to our air in the UK, if you want to breathe, you need digital ID, but it's not mandatory. No, it's not mandatory. Don't be silly. Farage, eager to paint himself as a champion of civil liberties, has warned digital ID won't stop illegal immigration but will be used to control and penalise the rest of us. Analysis by the New Britain Project think tank shared with Politico shows that Google searches for digital ID were elevated for around 3 weeks after the announcement compared to the typical one-day spike for most policies. Interest dwarfed the decisions too, with peak search traffic for digital ID 20 to 50 times higher than any other flagship policy times in the last year. Because people care about this. People are genuinely and understandably concerned by all of this, and so they should be. I'm really keen to hear what you guys think about this down below. Also, make sure you go and check out Ground News, and using my link down below, you can save yourself 40% off a Vantage plan. Thank you for watching, and I shall see you all in the next video.